daily dose of practical wit and wisdom with a professional educator and trainer, Amazon best-selling author, United States Marine, television and radio host, Paul G. Markle. Each episode will focus on positive and productive ways to strengthen your mindset and help you improve your relationships, career goals, and overall well-being. Please welcome your host, Paul G. Markle.
All right, welcome back, and we are back, and I promise that we're going to do everything we can do, everything within our power to make sure that you get these shows all the time when you're supposed to get them. Now, we will be taking breaks occasionally. Generally, I'll try and give you a heads up before I take a break. But what happened last Friday and last Monday was my producer put the show together, submitted it to iTunes, and iTunes screwed up. Now, all you hip cats, all you people who are a little sharper than the average bowling ball, you realize that you could go to morningmindsetpodcast.com and that the audio archives would be there. Also, there are some podcast players that are not supported by iTunes that are independent, like SoundCloud. You could go to SoundCloud and you could find the shows there. What happened was iTunes dropped the ball, and we had to go back to iTunes, and my producer had to actually get in there and essentially resubmit everything to iTunes because they screwed up. So in the future, if you don't get the show, if I didn't tell you I was going to take a break, and I will be telling you when I'm going to take a break, but if I didn't tell you that, you can always go to Morning Mindset Podcast. And it's morningmindsetpodcast.com. And also there are other independent services, like I said, like SoundCloud and YouTube. We also have them up on YouTube as well. So there you go. That is the story behind that. Well, what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about the way we've always done it. Oh, how many of you have ever heard that? How many of you have ever been new on a job? You get a new job, you start working for a new company or a new department or what have you, and someone says to you, when you're like, hey, how come we're doing this like this? And that's the way we've always done it. All right. Well, when I was in the military and I contracted later on, we had a phrase that we called the three-ring binder syndrome. Now, you young crumb-crunchers might not know what a three-ring binder is, but older folks, you guys know what that is. That is that big plastic three-ring binder that has all of the SOPs. All the SOPs for the department, the company, the whatever. The agency SOPs are in the three-ring binder, and that is the holy grail. That's it. That's the gospel according to the bosses, the three-ring binder. Now, many times the three-ring binder was written and compiled, and all those SOPs were put together a long time ago, maybe 20 years ago, maybe 30 years ago. In the case of the military, obviously the United States military has been actively serving since the time of the Revolutionary War, right? And we started writing things down. We started writing down SOPs. And they got passed over and passed over and passed over. And before you know it, we're doing things in certain ways. We're conducting business in a way that no one understands. They don't know why we're doing it. They don't understand why this is the best way. They just know that's the way we've always done it. And after you've been with a company or an agency or what have you for some time, it's easy just to fall into that's the way we've always done it, and it still seems to work, so we're just going to keep doing it that way. It's very hard when you're on the inside to see issues with fresh eyes. It's usually the people that show up from the outside. For instance, when I was a contractor, I showed up at this one unit, and before I got involved in the actual teaching, I and myself and a couple of other guys, we stood back. And we just monitored, we observed, we audited the classes, right? And not everything was crazy, but every once in a while we'd encounter a situation, and the three of us would look at each other like, "Did they said what?" And we knew, based on our experience in education, that a lot of what they were teaching was outdated, and there were better ways. And when we would question them about it, the existing cadre, most often they'd say, that's the way we've always done it. Or they would point. They actually had the physical 3-ring binder, right? And they would point. They're like, that's what it says to do right in there. Okay, that's great. I'm sure that is true and that it says to do that in there. But when is the last time anyone considered why we do what we do? Well, think about, and I say this often, but heart surgery. Okay, if you had to go in to do heart surgery, would you want the doctor using the 1970 SOP for heart surgery? Or would you want him using the 2018 SOP for heart surgery? You're like, well, heart surgery worked back in the 1970s. I'm like, yeah, it did. But why don't we do it the same way today as we did then? You say, well, today we have more information. We have the ability to share information. We have more experience. We have more technology. We can do it better. Okay, we can do it better. So, but using the 3-ring binder mentality, we would say, we're never going to change it because that's the way it's always been done. And if we're going to be intellectually honest with each other, we probably will I'd say the majority of us will agree that that's the way we've always done it, or the 3-ring binder syndrome, that really is just an excuse for mediocrity or laziness. Because in order to re-examine the 3-ring binder, we would have to, apply effort and time. Somebody would actually have to go back, read that stuff, consider whether or not there was a better or more efficient way of doing it, and then rewrite the SOP. And then you're like, you guys feel like, I'm not doing that. That's extra work, and I'm not doing extra work. Yeah. So what happens? We have companies, we have agencies, we have departments that just keep doing the same thing over and over again, even though it's not the best way. Now, I'm not saying to be an a-hole. I'm not saying to jump in and be Mr. Smartmouth and say, you old guys don't know what you're doing. A lot of times the old guys do know what they're doing because they have 30 years worth of experience. But at the same time, let's say you do have that fresh set of eyes. You have a new hire. You have someone who's new in the unit, and they've never, seen the way you do things, or they see the way you do things and they question it. And you could say, shut up, that's the way we've always done it. Or you could explain to the new guy, you could say, you know what? The method that you are suggesting, we did indeed try that method. And you know what we found? We found that it didn't work. And this is why. I found that in the training arena. I found that you had new ways of doing things. And people would come in and they're like, this is a new way. This is where everybody's doing it today because, and they're like, okay, we'll try that. And then we would try it. And after a few classes, a few hundred students, what we would find is that all the students in the classes, or students in all the different classes, were making the same errors and the same mistakes. So what did we learn? We learned that on paper that way might seem like the best way, but in practical application it doesn't. So I'm not telling you that the way you've always done it is always wrong. But at the same time, the way we've always done it is more often than not used as an excuse. It's used as an excuse not to, think, to just be lazy and be mediocre. So before you just accept it's in the 3-ring binder, or that's the way we've always done it, take a second and observe. Take a second and think about it. Okay. Today's show was brought to you by a book called Faith and the Patriot, A Belief Worth Fighting For. And that book is available. If you'd like to find out more about it, Faith and the Patriot, go to Amazon.com, and it's by an author called Paul Markle. I know, that guy. So go to Amazon or Kindle, look up Faith and the Patriot, A Belief Worth Fighting For. All right, guys, I'll talk to you again real soon.
Thank you for spending time with us today. To get show notes, submit a topic request, and for more from your host, Paul G. Markle, visit morningmindsetpodcast.com. That's morningmindsetpodcast.com. Please leave a review for this podcast on your favorite podcast player. We appreciate your time and effort, and we look forward to reading your honest feedback.